underway.
Okay, thank you guys for coming. Just a little clarification. Today's topic is going to be on civil rights, the civil rights progress, along with the introduction of drugs in our community. So in that theme, I will get started. I'm going to start off with the 1896. In 1896, the 15th Amendment was ratified. Also in 1920, Women's Suffrage Act got the right to vote. And then, believe it or not, in 1870, black people were given, or African Americans, for some of you guys who want to hear that, were given the right to vote, but were not allowed to vote, not until 1965. I'm going to do a little compendium, or a little overview, so bear with me right quick. 1948, President Truman passed Executive Order 9981, which allowed the armed forces to be integrated. In 1954, May 17th, the Supreme Court, Brown versus the Board of Education, segregation was unconstitutional. 1955, Emmett Till was killed, allegedly for whistling at a white woman. I met a person that was there, and actually he had mentioned something about a chess move. But anyway, the young man was murdered. Also of that year, in December, Rosa Parks decided not to get up on her seat, which started the Boy Bus Cop. 1957, January to February, Dr. King, along with Mr. Steele and Mr. Fred Shuttleworth, started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. September of that same year, in 1957, Little Rock, Arkansas, called the Little Rock Nine, were not allowed to go into school. They were blocked by the governor, Orville Ford. President Eisenhower had to send in the federal troops. In 1960, Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 black students sent in at the Woolworth counter. In April of that same year, the Nonviolent Coordinating Group, SNCC, was formed, leader Stokely Carmichael. In 1961, May the 4th, Freedom Riders. That summer, over 1,000 black and white students ascended on the South to encourage people to vote. In 1962, James Meredith enrolled in the University of Mississippi. Also, President Kennedy had to send in the federal troops. In 1963, Dr. King was put in jail. Also, he wrote the letters from jail. You heard of that, the letters from Birmingham jail. That same year, April, Bull Connors, who was the police chief, put the dogs, many of y'all seen that in 63, 60 dogs on the children and the fire hose. Also that year, NAACP President Medgar Evers was murdered. Also, August of that year, that was the March on Washington. And also September of that same year, 1963, 4 little girls were killed in the 16th Baptist Street Church. But there was a 5th girl that was injured also. I had a chance this year to be down there on an event, and I met a couple of people, and also I met a homeless guy who gave me some very inside information. He was 8 years old when this happened, and he told a terrible story about some things that most people in the public don't know. Also, what happened in 1963, at that time, 2 boys were also murdered, 14 years old. They had put the kids in like a cattle corral, and in the where they have a state fair, and they had fenced the kids in there, and one of the kids had tried to escape, and they shot him in the head. And another young man outside the church, a 14-year-old boy, was killed also outside the church. That you guys didn't know anything about. 1964, January, the 24th Amendment was abolished. This amendment abolished the poll tax. 11 southern states, you had to have, they assessed the poll tax if you wanted to vote, which most black people couldn't afford to pay. Also, was started, CORE and SNCC were engaged in voter registration that year. Also, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill. Also, 3 civil rights worker were killed by the KKK, and come to find out the KKK were members of the police force. In 1965, February 21st, Malcolm X was murdered. Also, March of 1965, it was a Selma to Montgomery march. They were stopped at Edmund Pettus Bridge. The state troopers stopped them. 50 people were sent to the hospital. August of that year, Congress passed again the Civil Rights Bill again. That year, 1965, LA had that uprising, which they call a riot. September of that year, President Johnson issued Executive Order 11-246. And what that did is reinforce the Affirmative Action Bill. In 1966, the Black Panther was founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seals. In 1967, Stokely Carmichael, that was the leader of SNCC, coined the phrase Black Power. Also, in June of 1967, Loving versus Virginia was struck down. That was the case that allowed black and white people to marry. 1968, Dr. King was killed. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill, stopping discrimination in sales and rental and housing and things of that sort. In 1971, April 20th, the Supreme Court upheld the busing law, meaning using busing to integrate our school system, which most southern states did not agree to. South Carolina, Virginia, those states refused for 2 years, would not send their children to school at all, with black people at all. That was the formation of a lot of private schools and military schools for white children. 1988, President Reagan vetoed and was overruled by Congress. Congress overruled President Reagan's veto of discrimination law for private funding of colleges and universities, meaning if you receive money from the federal government, you have to adhere to the law of the land, meaning to allow African Americans to attend your school or go into private businesses. In 1991, President Bush reversed his issues and signed the Civil Rights Act of 1991, providing money for those institutions that will allow people of color to go into their institution. In 1992, Rodney King was beaten, and an uprising or riot, as they call it. In 2003, June, the Supreme Court upholds the University of Michigan affirmative action policy 5-4. Y'all know what happened with that. June of that year, the ringleader, one of the ringleaders that killed Medgar Evers, was convicted 41 years later. 2003, Rosa Parks dies at 92 years old. 2006, Coretta Scott King dies at 78 years old. 2007, Emmett Till's case was opened up again, and it was quickly closed. The people that killed Emmett Till, who they knew, who killed Emmett Till, but they were never prosecuted. 2008, Senator Edward Kennedy introduced the Civil Rights Act for workers. In 2009, New Haven, Connecticut, white firefighters said they were reverse discrimination, case in the Supreme Court. 2013, Shelby versus Holder. This case right here struck down Section 5 of the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act, meaning it took out all of the pre-clearances that you had to go through to be able, the pre-clearances meaning a person had to throw a ball, or somebody at the voting poll could say, name me all the senators or something crazy. Anyway, the Supreme Court gutted all that and said that they didn't need that anymore. 13 of the southern states right now are going with voter ID registration and doing a lot of things to discourage people to vote. 2014, a new center was opened up in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the Human Rights Building in Atlanta, Georgia. September 2014, case was opened up against Ferguson, Missouri for the murder of Michael Brown by a white officer. In 2015, the Justice Department, along with the FBI, reached a deal avoiding a lawsuit against the city of Ferguson and the state of Missouri. Okay, just some things that I want you guys to pay attention to. African Americans today in this country have more wealth than 163 countries. Today, there are 6,799 white banks, and there are 21 black-owned banks. In 1865, y'all, black people had a wealth of 0.5%. Today, black people have a wealth of less than 1%. In 1830, they passed the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act was passed allowing immigrants, Irish and a lot of white immigrants, to come into this country, and they were given free land in 1830. In 1930, FHA was established, the Fair Housing Authority. In 1947 and 1948, the GI Bill was established, and most black Americans were not allowed to take part in the GI Bill. So you guys, I want you to understand about money and understanding the expanding gap on money. The average household today, the average household income today for whites is $58,270. For Hispanics, it's $40,000. For blacks, it's $34,000. The average inheritance payout, meaning inheritance what you leave to your siblings. Whites are at $145,000. Blacks are at $42,000. Predatory lending, which is very important. Predatory lending hit blacks at 62.3%, Hispanics at 61.9%, and white people at 38.2%. The average American household net worth right now today, blacks have a net worth of $6,446, Hispanics $7,843, whites $91,405. Listen to this, guys. This is interesting. Black males are still lost in the line when it comes to receiving wage increases and title changes in their various fields of employment, proving that the most recent recession hit black Americans harder than any other group. The housing crisis that happened, whites were affected 4.5%, African Americans were affected 92%. African Americans lost a combined wealth of $194 billion was lost through the housing crisis in 2009 through 2012. Y'all hear me this? Black people lost $194 billion during the housing crisis that just happened in 08 and 09. Preschool suspension, or timeout, as they call it. Blacks are suspended 42%, whites are suspended 28%, Hispanics are suspended 25%. Okay. Federal small business. This here is an indicator of where people receive federal grants for small businesses. 98.2% federal contracts goes to white people. 98.2% small business loans go to our white brothers and sisters. And blacks receive 2%, Hispanic 1.5%. Taking care of business in comparison, construction business ownership. Blacks 3.7%, whites 83.9%, Hispanic 15%. Professional and related occupation. Blacks 28.7%, whites 38.8%, Hispanic 20.2%. Service occupations, 25.6%. Service occupation, 25.6% for African Americans, 16.8% for white people, and 26.6% for Hispanic. Another interesting factor here, the number of states where new voting restrictions were instituted since President Barack Obama came in office, 22. The number of states that are asking for you to show your ID when you vote, 14. In Texas, you can vote if you have a license to carry a gun, but if you have a college ID or anything like that, you cannot use that to vote. DNA exoneration. DNA exoneration meaning these individuals that were exonerated based on DNA evidence. 29.9% white people, 6.9% Hispanic, 62.6% of African Americans have been exonerated for falsely being arrested for allegedly doing a crime. 62.6%. And what I will leave you lastly is this. The average racial breakdown for full-time police personnel in America today, black police officers are 11.9%, Hispanic 10.3%, white officers are 74.7%.